Welcome to the All Ambient podcast, where we dig into the creative process, hear untold stories, and explore the brilliant minds behind some of the finest ambient music out there. I'm your host, Mike Graff. I'm excited to be in this together with you. Let's get going. Again, welcome to the All Ambient podcast, everyone. My name is Mike Graff. I make music as Dear Gravity. I'm so glad you're here. I really am. We're doing this together. It's going to be great. Today is an amazing conversation with none other than Ben Tatlow. You've heard Ben plenty on the roundtable episodes and music news episodes. This is a round 2 interview with Ben. We talked with his work as Antarctic Wastelands a handful of months ago, but Ben is also an incredible label head at Echoes Blue and Slow Echo, amidst other labels that he has helped manage and lead and build from the ground up. He's got an incredible mind on the business side, just as much on the music side. I just want to talk about the journey, the joys, the pitfalls, everything in between of running a record label, and who better to talk to than Ben. So he shared a lot. This was a really fun one. You're not going to want to miss it. Let's dig right into my conversation with Ben Tatlow. All right, everyone, we are back for a round 2 interview with a dear friend and partner in crime and all of the above, just incredible musician, businessman, just creator, entrepreneur. Ben, there's so many adjectives and verbs and all the words to describe you. I could keep going, but I'll stop for now. Ben Tatlow, welcome back to the All Ambient interview chair. It is great to have you once again, my man.
It's great to be back.
Here we are. Well, wanted to chew through something that I think is interesting to everybody, but there are also few people that are able to speak into it as well as someone like you, not only because of experience, but also just through your wisdom and through, again, just you are so well versed in so many different angles of all things music that you are absolutely the one to talk with on this. But the subject that I wanted to hit today is the simple idea. Well, it's not simple, but the idea simply of running a record label. I think there can be a lot of assumptions attached to the word record label or music or, just to a label, whether it is the most independent of independent operations or all the way up through the majors. I feel like there can be a lot of assumptions made on the good side, on the positive side, and also on the negative side of just what that whole structure entails, what it does, what it doesn't do. But man, I've watched you, Ben, not only grow your label catalog, grow your label roster, and watch the momentum and just the accolades and the continued success of your labels throughout the years. But I've also watched you continue to take proactive steps forward. I've watched you continue to bravely challenge, a lot of the things. The music industry is changing every 4 seconds these days. And you've done such a great job of staying not in a reactive space, but just in a proactive space. And I'm just, taken aback sometimes by how well you handle all that. But for any of our listeners who may not know, Ben, in addition to you, of course, being, an integral part of your monikers, Salt of the Sound and Narrow Skies with your lovely wife, Anita. Of course, you make music as Antarctic Wastelands, Memories of the Forgotten. You and I have a collab moniker, Grey North, with more cinematic licensing stuff. You've got, a ton of projects on the music side, but also in addition to that, for you to be the one who runs the label Echoes Blue, to also co-run with Marshall, to co-run Slow Echo, which, you listen to the 2 names of those, and it does serve as kind of a sub-label of sorts, but also to now have watched the momentum and basically the life of its own that Slow Echo has now become. To me, they really do feel like separate entities at this point. So that's a great thing that happened, right? But man, and this is in addition to, to a lot of other managerial type label roles that you've had through, connections at, Echoes in the Valley and the Valley View family. I know that there are some things coming up in 2025 that also like partnerships and helping develop more label work. You are gifted in, on both sides of the plane, man. And that's a big deal. So I would love to hear from you, really just kind of story time in a lot of senses. I would love to hear from your perspective what some of the joys of running a label are, like just some of the things you're like, man, like I love finding myself in this position. I love just some of the things that really line up with who you were created to be. Then also, maybe just some of the rough parts or some of the things that you find challenging or are continuing to evolve and maybe hard to keep up with. I'm not trying to project on you, but yeah, just curious, kind of want to hear some of the stories in a lot of senses. We'll back and forth a bit, but yeah, Ben, way to just crush it on running these multiple labels and doing it with grace and with just you are so cordial and you are so kind, and yet you are just a boss at it. So well done on all fronts.
Well, you're very, very kind with everything that you have said. I appreciate it. And I'm thankful to be in the position that I am, to be able to kind of help a lot of artists along this journey.
Right.
One of the things I love about running record labels, being involved in record labels, is honestly the same thing as I love about collaborating with other artists on a production side of things. And it's the community, it's the people. Yeah. So much of a life as an artist it's so easy to exist in a kind of silo or just kind of on your own in front of a computer. And I love with the record labels that it's become much more of a community thing. You're bringing people on board. You're bringing people whose music you admire, whose music you've looked up to for a long time, and they're kind of part of that roster, and then you're able to kind of connect them with other people who are maybe more up and coming and create beautiful music, but also kind of bring people along for that ride. And so for me, that's a hugely rewarding piece of what I do. Yeah. It fits really nicely alongside the kind of artistry and the production side of things, and they kind of go hand in hand. Running a record label is something I kind of almost always have done alongside creating music, because for me, when you create music, you produce music, you have an artist moniker, you put it out into the world, well, then you kind of have to be your own record label. And when you get a taste of that, and then you're like, okay, I kind of see what it takes to kind of promote music and to collaborate with other people and to kind of build up an artist project. You're like, well, hey, let's just bring some people alongside us to do this together. And you know, you were, as we've spoken about before, I think on the podcast, you were our first artist, which was not myself or Anita, on Echoes Blue. Right. And kind of that was the start of a really beautiful thing that has emerged over the past, in particular over the past 5 years, but also longer than that as well. So yeah, it's just been a beautiful journey alongside other like-minded creators. Living in Hong Kong, I mean, there are a few of us ambient creators here, but it's not a massive scene. And so just to be connected with people all over the world who see things in a similar-ish way, understand the kind of things that I'm up to, is rewarding and helpful and enjoyable, and I love it.
Well, that's awesome, man. Then, like, and again, like we're just kind of sharing, maybe some, highs and some lows. We do high-low buffalo around our dinner table with the kiddos, and it's just the idea of like, kind of a high point of the day and then a low, like, just acknowledging, maybe there was something that was kind of a bummer or whatever, and then buffalo is just whatever the heck you want, just nonsense, which can get pretty interesting. I think honestly might be really good to kind of high-low buffalo this. Like I know that there are bumps along the road. I also know that there are giant wins, to be celebrated as well. What are some of the things that happen? Whether, I won't even give an example. Let me volley that over the net to you, Ben. Like, what are some of the things that have happened, just within like recently, or, even just kind of along the journey over the last several years that were just kind of that affirming moment, or the thing where you're like, man, like, I love this. This is why I love doing what I do. What are some of those moments?
I'll give some specifics, I think. I mean, there's of course the generic answer, which is kind of the working with other people and getting to meet people, like not only over the internet, but also in real life. And that's amazing.
And not to dismiss any of that by any means.
And not at all. Like, there are some, those kind of like almost more obvious things that just are involved in building up a business, building up a label, connecting with people. But that part of it aside, for me, some of the most cool and rewarding stuff is when we work with smaller artists and can kind of bring them up to that kind of next level. So be that through collaborations with more established artists and kind of really see their streaming numbers increase dramatically. Be that kind of getting like a big playlist editorial placement for an artist who had never got anything like that.
Right.
Just kind of really kickstarting just artistic possibility for people who are kind of in those earlier stages of their career. And for me, that's I think by far and away the most rewarding part of it. I love working with our more established artists. Of course, that's kind of what I do on a much more regular basis. And I love creating and helping release just beautiful projects. And that's, of course, a massively rewarding part of the journey as well. But yeah, for me, there's something about it because I think partly because we've all lived it, we've all been that smaller artist at one point in our journey.
Right, yep,
and just being able to kind of almost shortcut that journey a little bit, or at least provide a bit of encouragement to those artists is, really just a great thing to be part of and kind of help out with a little bit.
100%. Yeah. And, that's that's one of the beauties of being a record label, period. Right. Like, and I think this is probably a good time to maybe back the train up just a little bit and to even kind of define, we've talked plenty on, roundtables, and there's plenty of discussion on the All Ambient podcast about what a label is, what it isn't, what we can expect it to do, what we probably need to do ourselves, all that stuff. But really the spectrum kind of exists in the sense of, like, if you were to look at like 0% to 100%, I think 0%, or, like the far left end of the spectrum, I guess, would be, you are completely self-published. Like you are a musician, you're one who's creating music, but you are doing all the production, the songwriting, the post-production yourself. You are in fact distributing it to, streaming platforms, whatnot, yourself, and upload all that stuff. You're kind of fighting for every stream. You are trying to look up little, ways to promote it, ways to get any sort of marketing, playlist, it lands, just whatever you can, which, man, more power to anyone who is tackling all of those things. And like you said, I think we all, in some sense, have had to at least grapple with the idea that those things are things that need to be tackled, right? Whether it's by us or by another entity, like those those are the things of the business. Like they have to be done by somebody for sure. And then the other end of the spectrum, the far right, being essentially like a, and we'll go all the way to like one of the big three, giant record labels where it's like, cool, we are your team, we are your bank, we are your marketing, we are your everything. We're going to plaster your idea, we're going to set up we're going to do a lot of work for you. And in exchange for that, don't get me wrong, like there is some value to all the promotional push and to all the help on both the, studio side and on the stage side. But then, that can come with the cost of a large, massive majority of percentage points that you own of your music. A lot of times not being able to retain ownership of your master recordings anymore. Then, we can get into the nitty gritty about release calendars and how basically one is just told, hey, this is when your music's going to come out. And for perhaps pieces of the creative journey to be not in your hands anymore, but you have exchanged it for a lot of other things. So that's a pretty wide spectrum. In between, I think, is where the majority of people find themselves, because there are so few artists that wind up in, the major space. And there, of course, are a lot of artists who are in, like the self-publishing space, but then there is a lot of room in the middle for a lot of artists who are succeeding to various degrees and doing, making great art and getting it out there. There are things probably that maybe are still a question mark to some people who are like, well, okay, so if I sign up to, if going through the steps and all the things, I've created, a recording that this particular label wants to distribute for me, and they want to take X percentage of, streaming royalties and X percentage of publishing, licensing royalties in exchange for what? And I think, that varies from label to label, but I'm putting you on the spot just a little bit. What would you, like, if you had 60 seconds in an elevator to try to tell somebody like why Echoes Blue, for instance, would be a, like what you are offering the people that, the artists that are on your roster. Yeah, just give me the elevator pitch on how you're making their lives better, which you clearly are 100%. This is not any type of grilling you or anything. I just want to hear like a quick pitch on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in there. And as you say,
sure is. You don't have to be quick. I attempted to kind of, I certainly wasn't quick. I just rambled for however long. But yeah, just walk me through some of the things that maybe labels in general offer, but then kind of some of the things that maybe you in particular, that Echoes Blue or Slow Echo or just any of the entities that you are very actively a part of, the things that you offer that you get excited about. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I want to just kind of say up front, I guess, that all independent labels operate in different ways. And there are pros and cons to many of the ways that they operate. And every label, at least in my mind, should be saying, okay, how do I make this mutually beneficial for the label, for the artist, while also making it something that is as artist friendly as possible within the constraints that one has as a label to, continue to operate. And that answer is different for everyone. That's something that I'm very keen on continuing to look at as Echo's Blue and as Slow Echo as well. Just making sure that we continue to be super artist friendly while also sustainable as a business.
Yeah.
So kind of the things that you should be, I'll take it a little bit more generic to start with and then kind of focus in on what we offer. So what you should be looking for is kind of what kind of playlists and promotional opportunities the label themselves have to offer within their own network. So they are essentially guaranteeing you, hey, you're going to show up on these big playlists. You're going to appear, let's say, on this radio station that we have a slot on, or on this massive YouTube channel, whatever it is. They have access to those within their own control, and you will get that. There are plenty of labels out there who don't really have any of that. And that for me is a little bit of a red flag, because they themselves then are reliant on other people and their connections to support them. So it's kind of one step removed. But yes, that's a big thing that you should be looking for. You should be looking for track record of what they have achieved with artists that they have. Are they able to connect you with artists within their own roster for things like collaborations, for things like remixes? One of the things we do with a lot of new artists, especially if it's an artist who are potentially slightly smaller in terms of streaming, will be like, okay, can we get some reworks, some remixes on this release? And kind of pitch those out as singles with more established artists, so that we just give those artists a leg up. And hopefully then the project as a whole just does that a little bit better and gets on the radar of both independent curators and also editorial curators. Yeah. You should look at any, again, past successes with Spotify, with Amazon, with Apple, with YouTube editorials. Does the label have some form of recognition within those ecosystems whereby the editorial teams are sitting up and taking note? Of course, it is a little bit of a black box. No one knows fully how those kind of editorial ecosystems work. And of course, increasingly, a lot of that is algorithmic, but still, the brand name of that label carries weight. And if they are consistently landing editorials on one or more platforms, then that's something to kind of sit up and take a look at. And then just purely on a kind of practical level, from a contract level, looking at things like, okay, what is the split that they're offering? Does that feel fair? Is there a ton of recoupments involved? Are they paying for anything? Like, I've seen contracts, and I will certainly not name names here, but where there are not only kind of relatively poor percentage deals for the artists, but the label is recouping kind of, majorly significant sums for things like artwork and promotional videos and mastering. And it's like, those are, in my mind, and how we operate as a label, we provide all of that free of charge for the artist. There should, in my mind, if you are signing a project as a label, you should trust in that project sufficiently that you can afford to pay for those things and provide those to the artist.
Right. It's like, you as the label, you are saying, like, I believe that this is going to be a beneficial thing for the label, so I am willing to, the skin in the game that you are putting in it is what you're saying, is that just as you're, asking the artist to put skin in the game as far as the percentage points that are being offered in exchange for that. I love that. It's kind of that's a collaborative relationship right there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and from a kind of splits perspective, the way we operate and have always operated is this kind of equal split, equal share kind of mentality, which is a little bit unusual in the industry. Most people have very standard splits, but basically for us, it's just looking at, okay, well, if it's just us and one artist, well, then there are two parties involved kind of putting in my mind, equivalent work. So we do this kind of 50-50 split. But if it is two artists, they've done a collaborative release, then we go with a three-way split with the artists and those two artists and the label. And my mentality and my rationale behind that is that when you have two artists behind a project, well, especially if they're more established, they are going to be able to get into those algorithmic placements. You get multiple pitches with that. There's a lot of benefits to releasing collaborative work, and actually comparatively or relatively less work on behalf of the label to be able to get that traction. Yeah. So kind of going three ways on that felt appropriate, and that's kind of how we operate. So there's that goes back to what I was saying before, which is kind of doing things that are fair, that feel kind of appropriate, and then also as artist friendly as possible within the remit of kind of operating a label.
I love it. Thanks so much for sharing all that. And I think it's really good, whether we're directly saying it or not. I think just a candid conversation like this is doing a good job of helping dispel some of those assumptions or myths that I think people might attach to, I just need a label deal, man. I just need someone to do this. Like, there are a lot of things that are pretty valuable to have as far as those relationships, those placements, those things like that, which are, like, I certainly believe like there is value attached to that. Like, there's a reason why there are percentage points traded for things like that, because, you are getting momentum and attention that you would not get, otherwise. But I think there can be kind of an assumption that there's just this almost magic sauce to just even being able to say that you've signed a label deal, or that this, this is the label, or whatever, where there isn't even necessarily some accountability baked in, or kind of what you were saying, like just the collaborative, like that there is skin in the game from both parties in order for, people to benefit. Like, there needs to be some success in a sense. Like, there needs to be some movement, so that there, when the like royalties start showing up, it's like, cool, we can do more of this. This is starting to, kind of create its own thing, which is great. I would love to just reiterate though that, like, it is not a silver bullet to, like, hey, I managed to, score this label deal with someone, and all of a sudden, you're assuming that the rest of your life is now just, set, and that that all of a sudden, the numbers are going to explode, and you're no longer going to have to touch any piece of the music stuff that disinterests you, that is just all happy-go-lucky creativeness, and the other party is going to just handle all the other bits. That relationship kind of, it, like you said, it changes from label to label to label. But at the end of the day, you're basically like hiring someone in a lot of senses. Like, even though the label's bringing you on, you can also look at it as though like the artist is bringing on a label team in a sense to handle, to lift, several of the pieces that are, more advantageous for me, like if I'm just speaking as an artist, like more advantageous for me to allow somebody who is much better equipped in that and can do it faster than me, can do it better than me, can get stronger results than me. It is wiser for that to be handled by people who are much wiser than me in that category, so that I have the ability to take that time and put it back into creating, composing, producing, recording more of that music that we want to get out there. So it really is just kind of a balance, figuring out what the fit looks like. But yeah, I mean, do you, like, when you were bringing on, and I know that you were selective in the people who join the rosters and whatnot, but do you ever get the sense from prospective artists that are looking to join one of the labels that you're a part of, do you ever get the feeling that there's someone who's just kind of looking for you or the label to do everything, and that they just basically need to, like, send you a pre-mastered song and that's it, and then you just lift everything else?
I think different artists come with different expectations.
Sure.
But I would say that 99% of the people who I've worked with, maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but a very large percentage of people who we work with are coming with exactly the mentality that you've described, which is,
sure,
hey, I am treating my artist project as a business. I am then contracting in different labels to work on specific projects where they would be best suited. I think that is absolutely the right approach. You are not going exclusive with a label. You're kind of picking and choosing what works best for particular projects. You're able to kind of test out the waters with different labels and say, hey, does this relationship work well? Does that fit with my music and my expectations of where that music might end up? And especially when you're starting out, having the opportunity to work with 3, 4, 5 different labels over, let's say, a year is invaluable experience, if nothing else, just to see how the different labels work, kind of gain some of that knowledge, gain some of that traction in the various kind of DSP ecosystems to be able to then push on independently in a kind of following year. So I personally, from an artist perspective, I think it is kind of imperative nowadays that you treat your artist project as a business in and of itself and use labels as a resource to kind of at some points shortcut, but also just to, in more a general sense, to build up just a broader listenership and fanship of your music.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that kind of straight answers your question, but yes,
yeah,
like
yep.
the most artists, in fact, almost every artist that I've worked with are just, that is their mentality. It's a really positive, collaborative mentality, and also coming without kind of massive expectations, which is really helpful because from my perspective, you know, for sure, I see if I sign something on a 50-50 deal, then I'm like, well, at the very, very minimum, I want that to do double as well as it would had that artist released it themselves. But
Correct.
in an ideal world, much more significantly better.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, nothing's perfect. Life is not perfect. And that doesn't always happen. And it's helpful when you are like, okay, well, this release didn't work well. But artists have that mentality of, well, of course, I'm also releasing 5 different things this year. If one falls down and doesn't quite work out, that's also okay. So from a label perspective, it's kind of okay if I look at the whole year. From an artist perspective, it's kind of okay if they look at their own whole year. And so again, it's this kind of mutually beneficial relationship and with an additional kind of level of mutual understanding of this is how the industry is.
Yeah, I love that, man. And, you know, I've seen you, maybe just to add a little asterisk to that, even with, you know, the relationship between Dear Gravity and Echoes Blue, just, you know, that single relationship there. Like, I've seen you do such a great job, not just, you know, bringing momentum to I Do, but also I see, you know, like there have been some really good kind of mentoring moments along the way and ways for, you know, for me to take the next step in artistry, whether that's, you know, honing this or refining this or branching out and going this way or that way. There is almost, you know, it's certainly, you know, it's the relationship and the trust that really can lean into benefits like that. But the idea of, you know, kind of yesteryear labels really doing a lot, the A&R guys, the artist and repertoire, really, the idea of like identifying an artist that you sort of want to work with and develop over, you know, the course of a few albums. And the idea of like, it really was sort of a long play investment instead of, you know, these days where it seems as though you basically need to prove yourself, you know, with gigantic, you know, viral numbers in this lane and that lane. And then all of a sudden the label's finally like, oh, cool. Well, we'll dump some more money on the thing that you've already basically, you know, like proven that you aren't really even in need of us. And so now we're going to say, sure, we'll give you money, which is, you know, just funny and ironic. I've seen you do a great job of coaxing along and helping develop Dear Gravity and you know, all the other artists that you're in touch with. And that, I mean, just even kind of the mentoring, the teaching in that is invaluable. I think it goes to show a lot that you just care about the art, you care about the people, not just, hey, what is in it for the bottom line of Echoes Blue and how can I make that number as, you know, as large as possible. You care about all the things, and that is just super valuable from my perspective. I just really cherish that a lot.
Well, that is, again, very much appreciated. It is something that of course, you know, that's something that we want to offer our artists, is a level of just imparting some of the experiences that we've seen as a label over the past 5-10 years, and just sharing of those experiences, not even just from myself, but from other artists on the label and what they're able to, their own experiences, their own wisdom. And, you know, as I said right up front, like for me, this is a sense of community. We're doing it together. Yes, I happen to be kind of, in some senses, towards the center of that, but I don't see myself as kind of leading this thing forward. I see that myself as much more of a connecting point and kind of helping usher the whole thing kind of forward in a way that just feels right for the music industry at this point in time, and being open to pivot if we need to, trying out different aspects of what we offer to see if that resonates with listeners and with other artists as well. And just to kind of remain flexible in our approach and how we do that. And hopefully my role is just making our artists' lives in that journey just that little bit easier, and just that, you know, helping their music grow just that little bit more.
Absolutely. We'll wrap it up in just a second here. But before we get there, I would love to give you, Ben, the opportunity to vent just a little bit. There are ups and downs everywhere. And not that the venting is about a single particular person. Maybe it is. Maybe you're talking to the particular person who's giving you some ups and downs.
There we go.
I don't know. But feel free, man. But the idea of like just some of the bumps along the road, some of the rough things things that maybe that you've experienced or that you've had to learn or really grow in. What are, just if you can pop any off the top of your head, some of the kind of the rough points in this journey that, of course, any rough point is a chance for education and a chance for us to then grow from it and learn. But yes, let's spill the tea a little bit. Yeah.
I'll give two. So the first rough point is, and this I'm sure will be true for many, many people who are setting up a label, if it's their first label. If you start out and your systems are kind of just built for like maybe 3-4 artists, this will work fine, no problem. Sure. Without kind of that foresight of like, maybe we'll have 20 artists, maybe we'll have 30, 40, 50 people that we're paying every year, those kind of things, then very quickly you have to redo a lot of work that you have done. And I have fallen foul of this on more than one occasion. And it goes to things like choosing the right distributor, choosing to work with companies in countries that work with the country that you live in, choosing to have the right kind of accounting systems on the right kind of platform, all of that stuff. If you get it wrong and then you have a significant amount of releases that you then need to port over to something else, that can be a pretty big headache. It's a learning opportunity, and in and of itself, that's not a bad thing. But like, for example, when we started Slow Echo, we got a lot of those things right up front. And that process has been a lot smoother than my experience with Echoes Blue, which had a number of transition points before we kind of landed in a place that kind of works for us for, the longer term. So that's the first thing. That's kind of more generic label, growth thing. Major venting headache is very specifically YouTube's content ID. It is my least favorite thing. And and I know that you know this already, so you could probably we could have a whole all ambient episode about YouTube content ID of why it should just disappear.
Go ahead.
But for some specific reasons. And it rears its ugly head in so many ways. So not only when it comes to working with specific licensing sites and them kind of needing to register your tracks on their own content ID, and that causing all kinds of clashes on the back end that need to be resolved and take a long time to resolve. But also it just falsely claiming music that is your own. And even people uploading, basically stealing from you, uploading your own music and then claiming content ID on it. And it's like, well, this is my stuff. And the amount, it's not the system necessarily in and of itself that's the problem. It's how that system is implemented, that the onus is on the party who's being claimed against to kind of essentially prove that they are in the right, that they own the content, they own the music, and to somehow get in touch with the people who are erroneously claiming this stuff and try to figure it out.
It's almost like guilty until proven innocent sort of thing.
It really is. And the amount of time, it wasn't this past year, the previous year, 2023. I mean, I honestly must have spent weeks of my life dealing with content ID issues. And it is just, the ROI on that is so low. It was one of the most frustrating parts of my entire record label journey. So there you go. That's my vent. But that is absolute anomaly in the experience of running a record label. Like the vast majority of it has been just so life-giving, fulfilling, joyful, and collaborative. And, if anyone is thinking of starting their own label or just kind of exploring what that might look like, it is a truly rewarding journey at whatever level it ends up being. And I would definitely recommend just kind of exploring that further if you've got that desire.
I love that. And again, like I'm just silver lining that last YouTube content ID thing a little bit more is just, like when you are continuing to deal with that pain point and figure out solutions, like then, me knowing you, like there is a lot of it where you're like, there has got to be a better way to do this. And then just start looking at like, how do we build better solutions or how do we, create licensing opportunities that have a lower degree of this sort of thing happening because we're able to work out some of those details ourselves. And there's I love that about you and about the whole experience where it isn't just let's put out the fire, but also like, well, what did we just learn and how do we because just like you said, like how much of a time suck that was for you. Like I know that you never want to do that ever again, and if you can prevent that type of thing from happening again, like there are steps that you're taking to to do that. And that's something that I want for you, and I think that's something that a lot of people would want for anyone who's taking care of their stuff, any artist label relationship. So yeah, I see you continually learning, pivoting, growing, refining, and just thank you for fighting the good fight, man. It it is no small thing. And I know that I try to commend you often, for all the brilliant things that you do, but seriously, like you humbly and confidently, wear the label head hat well. I couldn't think of a better person to be in this together with. And you just thank you for all that you bring to all that you touch, Ben. Means a lot.
Thank you. And you know that I feel likewise. So yes, grateful for you and your artistry and your partnership in so many areas of our label journey, and for trusting us as our first artist with your music as a guinea pig. So yes, it's a
beautiful journey indeed.
Grateful.
Really is. Really is. Awesome. Well, thanks for John on all the fun label stuff. Really appreciate you pulling back the curtain a little bit. Yeah, no doubt that this is beneficial to a boatload of people. So thanks so much, Ben. Appreciate you, man.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the All Ambient podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can catch every conversation we have with all these incredible people who share the same passion. I'm looking forward to the next time, and I hope you are too. Can't wait to see you then, and until then, have an incredible day. Here's hoping this music and the heart behind it makes your day and life that much better. We'll see you next time.